Before calling off their 2-month-old strike last week, the Judicial Staff Union of Nigeria and the Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria had signed a Memorandum of Action, MOA, with the Nigerian Governors Forum. At the heart of the MOA is the implementation of financial autonomy for state judiciaries and legislatures across the country. Expectations are therefore high that the governors will comply with the MOA, a court judgment in this regard, and the agreement on financial autonomy for the two arms of government at the state level. In furtherance of this goal, the Nigerian Judicial Council, which played a mediatory role during the standoff, has set up a 5-man committee to implement the MOA. Joining us now from Abuja to give us highlights of the MOA and what his ministry is doing to create jobs in the country is Minister of Labour and Employment, Senator Chris Ngige, who also led the negotiating team while the industrial action lasted. Good morning and welcome to the program, Senator Ngige.
Morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Senator Ngige. Thank you for joining us. First, if you could take us through the negotiations that led to the suspension of the strike by the Judicial Union or Judicial Staff Union of Nigeria, and then some new development this time. The JUSON wrote a letter to you commending you for your intervention and the role that you played in getting to a point where after 64 days the strike was called off. That, I must say, was quite unusual, you know, with Labour. In previous negotiations with Labour, they used to come and block the entrance to your house. What did you do right this time that you got a commendation?
Yeah, His Excellency Ruben would have been Deputy Governor of Ogun. I think, can you hear me now?
Yes, clearly.
Well, there is nothing too strange. It's a battle of economic survival and economic independence. The judiciary wanted autonomy, as in the Constitution. The legislature in the states, that's the State of Assembly, also wanted the same. But you see, when you go to the judiciary, the people you see and the people you talk with are the staff there, starting from the chief registrar, then going down to others. So that's what you notice is a tug of war between members of the judiciary and the legislature for self-survival. The president, if you remember, signed up to the amendment or alteration of the Constitution in the 4th alteration and gave autonomy to these two bodies, arms of government in the states, not in federal, because the federal system already created independence for them in the Constitution. There is no lacuna about that. It's clear that the funds meant for them go straight to the NJC, according to Section 81 of the Constitution. So they are what some people call first-line charge. Now, the states, costs in the states created, because if you go to Section 6 of the Constitution, it listed the costs, 6.5, but gave out powers to the National Assembly in subsection K and L for the State Assembly to create other courts. So what is listed in 6.5 A to H are superior courts of records and in the Constitution. The other ones created by the state, like Sharia courts, customary courts, magistrate courts, they are creations of the state law. But that allocation coming from NJC into the costs created by 6.5 A to it doesn't cover them. It covers only those costs listed there. And if you go to section 84.4 again, it also said those to be paid from the fund that is gotten by the NJC from the federal allocation as statutory transfer. So it was that lacuna that 1213 sought to bridge, and the president gave assent to that particular alteration. But it has been difficult for the states to come to terms with it and give that full autonomy. Some of them are already funding anyway. So they are now saying, why is there now need to compel us to do this? But again, the people who own the money, because it's their money, the judiciary, full judiciary, and full assembly, they are saying you are not, you are shortchanging us. We want our independence. So that is what is there. There is nothing that is very absurd. And of course, there must be resistance. And the judges cannot come out to fight. The legislators also cannot also come out to fight their governors direct. And the judicial workers and the parliamentary workers led the onslaught because they also suffer some loss in allowances and income and other welfare packages that are associated with their job. So this is it. And when the ding-dong lasted, the president did the Executive Order 10, by which erring states were to lose their rights to collect the total allocation of their states. And if you are still erring, the Accountant General of the Federation was to deduct as source from Abuja here the money and transmit it into the account of the state. They made representation through the Governors Forum. They went to court and questioned so many other things in that executive order, and even portions of the Constitution. They wanted full interpretation of what those portions meant. So, President said there is no need being legalistic. Chief of Staff handled this matter. And as he was handling it, it snowballed into a full-blown strike. And the strike continued. I allowed them to continue the negotiation because by the mandate of my ministry, industrial dispute resolution is one of our cardinal mandates. And when the strike lasted more than 3 weeks, I had to invite all of them to come. I met with the chair of Judges Conference of Nigeria, state judges, chief judges, state heads of courts in the state, who are the chief judges. They have an association, and we met with them, the chairman and deputy and secretary. We met also with the implementation committee for Executive Order 10. That's the Attorney General represented by the Solicitor General, and their secretary, Senator Ita Enang. We met also with the Governors Forum, separate meetings, and then we did now a combined meeting. It didn't break the impasse, and we continued because that is part of our trade. And we were able to finally to fashion out an agreement document, which was translated into Memorandum of Understanding. And from Memorandum of Understanding, we moved it into Memorandum of Action when we now started putting timelines, 45 days for the governors to put in place all the structures needed to implement that autonomy, and for the legislative houses of assembly to open so that those laws can come in. About 3 laws are cardinal in the agreement we had. And that agreement says that, number 1, states are to create what is called State Account Allocation Committee, SAAC, which is the equivalent of FAC. Because whatever we are doing, we want to do it based on a template of what is succeeding. And for us, what is succeeding is the NJC template and the federal template which we use between our executive and the National Assembly. So they have to put up a SAC. A SAC is to be headed by a commissioner, and then the allocation that come into the state on a monthly basis will come there from FAC, allocation to states, and the IGR of the state. It will be made known to this committee. The committee is to be headed by Commissioner for Finance of the state. A second body is the State Budget Committee, to be headed by the commissioner, the relevant commissioner, for them, again, to, at the beginning of the year, get budgets from the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. And in this budget committee, envelopes will be given out of what you can spend for the year, and what is the projected receivable for the year, and apportioned out like that to envelope to the judiciary, envelope to the legislature, envelope to the executive, and the thing will go to the State House of Assembly. It depends on the mode the people want to do. In federal here, we don't, we allow them after the envelope to submit direct to National Assembly. In the state, some states would like to get everything assembled, and the governor will present. In the former times, even here, when we started our democracy early enough, it was gathered together. I think in the 90s, it's gathered, early 2000s, it's gathered and president presents. But right now, we allow them, use the envelope and their budgets. They defend it in the National Assembly. So this is what has now been replicated in the state, and we think it's going to work. In fact, it's working, because some of the return report we get is that even some states, while on the discussion table, have gone ahead to put up these three bodies and enact laws backing them up. Bayelsa have done so, Delta have done so, Plateau, just the other day, immediately the agreements were signed, have started implementing. Lagos, Rivers, and some others have been up and doing, have been given full financial backing to these two bodies. But we are only saying, do them now in consonance with the agreement we have reached, this Memorandum of Action. Put that package into a budget of the year, and put again the releases as due to them in the same manner, and release to them on from the Accountant General's office of statutory transfer or first line charge into the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the state. So that is what we've done, and a lot of negotiation went into it, up and down, but at the end of the day, we're happy we're all now on the same page.
We're all very happy. So far, so good. But it's actually been termed as a suspension of the Jusen and Passant strike pending 45 days. The NJC has formed a committee to sort of supervise the implementation and monitor the implementation of the MOA and all the measures that you just described. How optimistic are you that at the end of the 45 days, we have maybe 38 or 37 days left to that deadline? How optimistic are you that at the end of that period, the strike will actually be officially called off?
Well, since I came to the Ministry of Labor and the labor unions go on strike, there's never a paper I've signed that they say they call off strike. They tell you that they suspend. I don't know where they learned that one from, but they say they suspend, and what it means is that when they suspend, they can go back if not satisfied. But I think we won't have need for this. We are in touch with the chairman of Governors Forum and the three-man committee that they themselves also set up on the negotiation. And that same three-man committee is also to look at compliance by the states. The governor of Plateau, Kebbi, their chairman, they are heading this committee. And I do not, you see, the agreement is still very okay because it has even delineated what capital expenditure should be and try to go down to the nitty-gritty so that the element of fear on both sides will be erased. The element of fear on the part of the judiciary workers and legislative workers, oh, when we call off, the governors will not go, keep their own side of the bargain. Again, they will say, we need compartmentalization in the assemblies, because when the money also comes, we are not sure what the legislators will do with it. So the agreement has gone into the legislature and said that for the legislature account, we will have 3 compartments. 1, account for the legislators. 2, account for the staff development and welfare. And 3, account for State House of Assembly Commission. So there are now 3 accounts there. So nobody will cross the line and go and use the money already budgeted or appropriated for any of these sub-bodies into his own compartment. So they are now less afraid. The governors themselves, oh, capital offenders, you mean that chief judges should be building courts and buildings for themselves without anybody saying something? Can chief judges award contracts, sign it, and if there is breach of agreement, is it not the cost that the thing will come to again? We now said capital expenditure in terms of construction of new buildings, court buildings, quarters, for both legislators, judges, are expenditures that will be supervised by the people who have the mandate, the State Ministry of Works and Housing, because those buildings are public buildings. So it's in the agreement there. So nobody wakes up and go and start awarding contract for building, even though it's in your budget. There must be synergy, because public buildings are the repos of ministries of housing, actually, works and housing. And so there must be that arrangement by which the supervision, the design, the structures, and everything are monitored from the State Ministry of Works. Vehicles, air conditioners, and others are capital expenditures that the judiciary or legislature can handle themselves. And in the case of the judiciary, the chief registrar is the accounting officer by the law, by the fund management law that will be enacted for the judiciary. And the clerk of House of Assembly is the chief accounting officer and chair of the management of funds in the State House of Assembly. So this is how we have designed it. Yeah. So it's like a skeleton given to them for them to be putting some flesh as they go on. And this is a work in progress. Every day we get new lessons, and so I think I'm very comfortable with it. I was a governor, so I also told the governors they don't need to panic on the agreement. I was a legislator, so I told the legislative people there is no panic. we have given you what is obtainable in the National Assembly. So that is how we are on the matter for now. But I'm very, very optimistic that we will not have any brouhaha again, provided everybody keeps to his own lane.
Right. Thank you so much, Minister. I like that phrase, provided everybody keeps its own part of the agreement. But you know the thing about human beings, they never keep to their part of the agreement. And if they did, we will not be where we are today. Something that is supposed to be a provision, you know, backed by law, executive orders here and there, but nothing has been done. I want to ask you this, Minister. Did we have to wait to get to the level of a strike that was protracted before we could talk some sense into ourselves as a nation? And did we have to wait this long? And also, I want you to put in one step further. The backlog and the denial of justice to a lot of people have been kept in the court system because the court was not sitting. Was it worth it? And these are issues we could have settled. Was it really worth it?
No, of course, Presenter, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. And you have said it all. You say human beings. And I began by telling you it's a sort of battle for economic survival and economic independence. And when you do a battle, there must be a fight. And some people will be wounded, if not killed. So that is what has happened. On the part of my ministry, when the judicial workers wrote, what we did was to invite them to come and discuss. But at the same time, we discovered that it is being managed at the level of the Chief Justice of Nigeria and at the level of the Chief of Staff to the President, whom Mr. President gave an instruction, reconcile these people immediately. I don't want us to be legalistic about this. So what I had to do was to monitor that negotiation. That negotiation is allowed in labor parlance because we're also allowed to appoint outside arbitrators to handle such a negotiation. We call it bipartite plus, two parties, bipartite plus, or even if we are doing it, it becomes tripartite plus, we can invite a foreign body to join, to help. So that's what was happening then. And so it's not like where we said, oh, no, we're not. No, they were having very fruitful discussions in the office of the Chief of Staff. And as a matter of fact, what we did in the ministry is to build on the one or two areas they have agreed, because the governors were not even giving any contemplation to it before. But when they were brought together down there, they started talking. Then the Association of Chief Judges joined. They will not be seen as such to be sitting on the table in my ministry. So they were doing that with the Chief of Staff. And when the strike was boiling over, and it looked like there was a breakdown in their discussion, we had to apprehend it and took it back into our ministry and took time step by step. Yes, we didn't need to leave the strike to linger on. I warned the judicial workers and the parliamentary workers because immediately I apprehend, everybody's supposed to go back to status quo and to Bellum. But this is our country, and you also know that those workers, like I said earlier before, they are doing it for themselves and for some people at the back. The big people are at the back. The speakers are at the back. The judges are at the back. So we had to tread very cautiously and handle it. We even held meetings with the CJ and Chief Justice of Nigeria and picked his brain and took his contributions in the negotiations. So we don't need to do that because the thing even boiled over to give us serious security issues because we are not working. Criminals and bandits and kidnappers, everybody. They were on the prowl. And police cells were over full. They couldn't take people to court to remand them in prison custody or correctional custody. So we don't want it to happen again, and it will not happen again. I don't think it will happen again.
Okay, Honorable Minister, about a week ago, ASU, the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, suspended their strike, I think for is it 30 days or so, to allow the federal government implement the terms in the Memorandum of Action that was agreed upon towards the end of April. Now, how far has the federal government gone with regard to the implementation of the agreements? And what are those key agreements?
Well, Ruben, you know that the social ministries of education and health, where you have gotten a lot of these labor issues, and we have desks there. We've created what we call labor desk in Ministry of Education and Ministry of Health. We also have in finance, we have in aviation, we have in petroleum, we have in agriculture. The ministries that are prone to industrial disputes because of the kind of professional workers they have. So on the polytechnic issue, I made it clear to the two ministers of education, their permanent secretary, that we already have a template of what we dealt with ASU. And the issues being raised here are about the same. So we told the heads of the union that this matter can be handled in-house in Ministry of Education. And we asked our labor desk to handle or guide them. And that's exactly what we did. We didn't bring them into our ministry, but we monitored and they did what we told them to do. So now that they have done that, we have a copy of the agreement that they've reached there, and it's time for us also to monitor the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Finance to make sure that what is in that agreement is effected, is religiously adhered to. Because like I said, they are not alien. The issues raised there are not outside the box of what we have done with ASU, that's Academic Staff Union of Universities, NASU, Non-Academic Staff Union of Universities, and SANU, Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities. The same issues of shortfall in salaries, issues of allowances, that's what they call end academic allowances, issues of non-benefits from the consequential adjustment done on the national minimum wage, and things like when they go on their sabbatical and things like that, what IPs has done right and what they are not done right. So it's the same thing. So I'm happy that the ministry listened to us and the desk took them on and the matter was resolved. We have now taken the agreement. Our job now is also to be monitoring and asking for feedback from the ministry on what they have done with implementation.
Well, moving on now to another strike that was suspended and another MOA, the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors. You have announced that you're offering a raise of 350% to their hazard allowance, which is great. But what can you do on the issue of a couple of state governments that they're complaining about still owe them 21 months arrears? What really can you as a Minister of Labour and Employment do to enforce payment of the salary arrears?
There is not too much I can do into making sure the money gets into their pocket. But I can assist by talking to those state governments, heads of those governments, to see that a workman is due his wages. A certain state in the southeast that had 21 months arrears in terms of call duty allowances and some other medical allowances. We have spoken to them. From 21, they have reduced it now. I think they have paid them 9 months. They are not arguing that they are not owing. But you see, the issues of management of workers is a very intricate issue, and I don't think the subnationals are paying great attention to it. A workman is due his wages, like I said before. And it pains me when I hear that people did not get money for work done. It is not right at all. It's against the convention of the ILO. It translates your job, your employment, into what we can call hazardous employment, hazardous job. You pay only when you like, against the terms and condition of service you've given to the worker. It's what the ILO called yellow dog practice. And we don't encourage it. So we are doing our best. We write those state governments, and do not forget issues of labor and minimum wage in particular, and workers' welfare is in the exclusive list, at least for now, item 34 in the second schedule. But we, as a ministry, try to be cautious as we handle it because of the federating units also have some right. But most of them are not establishing ministries of labor, at least to assist them, or even big Department of Labor to assist them in handling labor issues. And I think that's not right, that's not proper. And that's why we have inaugurated what we call National Labor Advisory Council. It's one of the councils that the ILO have recommended for countries in the ILO net, 187 countries. So Nigeria has done their own. All the state governments are now members of that National Labor Advisory Council. And it is from this National Labor Advisory Council that we will educate the states. We will let the states and their workers know how to collaborate and do what we call social dialoguing. In fact, the main job of the National Labor Advisory Council is to make sure there is social dialogue between employers and employees.
All right.
And then government will come in whenever there's a breakdown.
Okay. I think we have to go now, Honorable Minister, because we're out of time. But I will have... Okay, good. I just want to quickly know an update on Kaduna issue. They've pushed that to your table now. They've stopped the fight between the Labour leader and El Rufai, and you're looking at that critically, calling both parties together. Will those workers be recalled? Briefly, quickly.
Well, we have a committee in place. We empaneled a committee of 10 in Kaduna. The head of service of Kaduna State is supposed to chair that committee. The board has complained to me that that committee has not come alive. And I intend, or I'm already taking the matter up, and we're getting in touch with the governor. That committee should be resuscitated or inaugurated and supported so that they can do social dialogue very quickly. It is on that table that the issues of those they have punished, in quotes, or victimized, in quotes, against the subsistence agreement will come up. We don't think it is proper. The workers, by ILO statutes, they have a right to strike, and they're not being punished or removed from job for striking. But you know, the strike in Kaduna was a different type of strike. It had some coloration of a high-wired strike that even overstepped some limits, which I pointed out to the labor leaders. But the government in Kaduna State, if they want to take their pound of flesh, they can invoke the principle of no work, no pay for those periods. One, if they also feel they committed economic sabotage that they're claiming, they can go to court. They can go to court.
On that note,
nobody stops them from going to court.
On that note, Senator Chris Ngige, we would like to thank you very much for joining us on the morning show. Thank you very much indeed, and for the information you provided about many labor issues. Thank you very much indeed.